My name is Eleanor Vance. I am 34 years old, and Manchester has always been my home, a city of resilient spirit, much like I always thought I was. For the past 10 years, the sprawling glass and steel building of Omnicorp Global had been my second home, a place where I felt valued, competent, and part of something bigger. My office, on the fourth floor, with its reliable old desktop computer and a window overlooking a bustling street, was my sanctuary. I was a senior operations analyst, a title that might sound dry to some, but to me, it meant being the quiet engine that kept the complex machinery of our division running smoothly. I handled the intricate dance of data, the delicate balance of logistics, and the critical analysis that informed major decisions. My colleagues knew they could always count on me to untangle a knotty problem or find a solution where others saw only dead ends. I prided myself on my thoroughness, my reliability, and my ability to foresee potential issues before they even appeared on the horizon. My work wasn't just a job, it was a craft I had honed, and I took genuine satisfaction in a job well done. Life outside of Omnicorp was equally steady. I had a cozy flat in Didsbury, filled with books, plants, and the comforting scent of freshly brewed tea. My weekends were a mix of exploring Manchester's vibrant northern quarter, catching a live band, or simply enjoying a quiet evening in with a good novel. I had a small circle of close friends, people who knew me deeply and saw beyond the quiet professional exterior. I was content, perhaps even a little complacent, in the steady rhythm of my life. I had built this life for myself, brick by brick, through hard work and dedication. I was finally at a place where I felt secure, stable, and ready for whatever new adventures life might throw my way. The company's annual bonuses were a welcome cushion, allowing me to squirrel away money for a deposit on a small house, a dream I had been nurturing for years. Overtime was often available, and I gladly took it, knowing each extra hour brought me closer to my goal. My previous boss, a kind and trusting man named Mr. Henderson, had always recognized my efforts. He knew I was efficient and could be counted on, and he gave me the autonomy I needed to excel. He championed my growth, always encouraging me to take on new challenges and ensuring my contributions were properly rewarded. We had a mutual respect that made working an absolute pleasure, a harmonious partnership that made coming into the office feel less like a chore and more like a collaboration. He understood the nuances of our department, the delicate balance of personalities and responsibilities, and he fostered an environment of trust and open communication. It felt like a family, a professional family, where everyone had a role and everyone was supported. Then the earthquake hit, not a physical one, but a tremor that shook the very foundations of my well-ordered world. Mr. Henderson, after decades of dedicated service, announced his retirement. There was a brief period of uncertainty, a few weeks of hushed speculation among the staff about who would fill his rather large shoes. We hoped for someone who understood our team, someone who valued experience and collaboration. We hoped for a continuation of the positive culture Mr. Henderson had painstakingly built. We were wrong. Completely, utterly wrong. The new director was announced with an almost chilling lack of fanfare. Her name was Veronica Thorne. The name itself felt sharp, cutting. I remember the day she first walked onto our floor. She wasn't tall, but she carried herself with an exaggerated air of importance that made her seem to tower over everyone. Her sharp, tailored suits seemed to be a uniform of unapproachability, and her gaze, when it landed on you, felt like an appraisal, cold and calculating. She had a way of looking through you, not at you, as if you were merely a cog in her machine, easily replaceable. Her arrival was accompanied by an immediate shift in the office atmosphere. The easy chatter, the friendly banter, the occasional bursts of laughter that used to echo through the corridors, all evaporated, replaced by a nervous silence, a palpable tension. People spoke in hushed tones, their eyes darting towards Veronica's office whenever her door opened. It was like a chill wind had swept through the open plan office, extinguishing the warmth we had all come to expect. From the very first staff meeting, Veronica made her intentions clear. She spoke with an almost unnerving self-assurance, her voice precise, every word chosen to assert dominance. She openly claimed she was in her role because she was smarter than anyone else. A statement delivered with a dismissive wave of her hand, as if it were an undeniable truth, rather than an arrogant boast. It was a declaration, not an introduction, setting the tone for the reign of terror that was about to begin. She spoke of efficiency, of streamlining, of cutting out the fat, all vague corporate buzzwords that, in her mouth, sounded like thinly veiled threats. She had a way of making eye contact that wasn't engaging, but rather challenging, as if daring you to question her authority. She dismissed our established processes with a flick of her wrist, proclaiming them outdated and inefficient, despite their proven track record of success. She made it clear that she would be overseeing everything, that no decision, however minor, would be made without her express approval. It didn't take long for her true nature to emerge, and my daily routine, once a source of quiet satisfaction, became a minefield. Veronica was a micromanager of epic proportions, but not in a helpful, guiding way. She made simple tasks unnecessarily complicated by injecting herself into every single step, often demanding detailed reports on things that should have taken minutes, turning them into hours of pointless administrative work. She seemed to revel in making things difficult, creating obstacles where none existed, simply to demonstrate her authority. I remember one instance where I was working on a critical data migration project, a task I had successfully executed dozens of times before. Under Mr. Henderson, I would have had the autonomy to manage it from start to finish, reporting on progress at key milestones. With Veronica, it became a ludicrous dance of approvals. I had to submit a step-by-step plan for approval, then daily updates, then get her sign-off on every minor data set transfer, even when it was just moving files from one server to another. She would demand screenshots, even video recordings of me performing basic computer functions, as if I were a novice. It was demeaning, time-consuming, and utterly nonsensical. The project, which should have taken a week, stretched into 3, entirely due to her incessant interference. Her methods were not just inefficient, they were maliciously designed to undermine and frustrate. She would withhold crucial information that I needed to complete my tasks, only to then berate me for not having completed them on time. Important emails, which once flowed freely and inclusively, suddenly developed a habit of missing my name in the recipient list. I would discover vital decisions had been made, or new directives issued, only when a confused colleague would ask me about them, or when I stumbled upon the information by sheer accident. She would then feign innocence, claiming it was an oversight, a technical glitch, anything but her deliberate exclusion. This wasn't just a minor annoyance. It directly impacted my ability to do my job effectively, making me look incompetent or out of the loop to others, which I knew was precisely her intention. She was chipping away at my professional reputation, eroding the trust and confidence I had built up over a decade. Her favorite, and by far the most irritating, move was her office visits. She would sweep into my office, her presence filling the small space, and ask questions she already knew the answers to. It was always about a project I was working on, a report I had submitted, or a deadline I was managing. She would stand there, her arms crossed, her eyes narrowed, staring me down like it was a test, a performance review of my very existence. I would patiently provide the information, knowing she had access to the same systems, the same files, the same emails. She would just stand there, silent, scrutinizing me, waiting for me to falter to show a crack in my composure. It felt like an interrogation, designed to make me feel small and inadequate. The air in my office would become thick with her judgment, suffocating me, making me want to scream in frustration. It was a power play, pure and simple, a demonstration of her authority, her control, her perceived intellectual superiority. She wanted to watch me squirm, to see me uncomfortable, and she derived twisted pleasure from it. I would answer her questions calmly, professionally, my heart pounding in my chest, my hands clammy, but my voice steady. The moment she would finally turn and leave, I would collapse back into my chair, taking a deep, shuddering breath, feeling as though I had just survived a grueling cross-examination. Each of these encounters chipped away at my confidence, gnawing at my self-esteem. The final straw, the undeniable proof that her malice was personal and targeted, came with the overtime and bonuses. Under Mr. Henderson, I had always had the option to work extra hours, especially during peak periods, and I always took advantage of it. The additional income was crucial for my house deposit savings. But under Veronica, suddenly, my requests for overtime were denied. "It's not necessary, Eleanor," she would say, her voice dripping with false concern. "We're focused on efficiency, not just throwing more hours at a problem." Yet I would see other colleagues, some even less experienced than me, being approved for overtime, their names appearing on the overtime sheets. It was a clear double standard, a deliberate attempt to limit my earnings, to stifle my progress. Then came the annual bonuses. These were a significant part of my compensation, a testament to a year of hard work and dedication. Under Mr. Henderson, I had always received a substantial bonus, reflecting my consistent high performance. This year, Veronica announced the bonus structure with a chilling smile. When the numbers were finally released, my bonus was a fraction of what it had always been, barely more than a token gesture. It was a slap in the face, a public declaration of my diminished worth in her eyes. I saw the numbers for my colleagues, even those who had joined more recently, and theirs were robust, reflecting the company's strong performance. Mine stood out as an anomaly, a deliberate downgrade. It was personal. She was not just making my work life difficult. She was actively trying to hurt me financially, to undermine my future, to crush my spirit. The dream of my little house, the years of saving, suddenly felt like they were slipping through my fingers. The injustice burned within me, a bitter, festering wound. I was no longer just frustrated. I was deeply, profoundly hurt, and a dangerous seed of resentment began to sprout in the fertile ground of my wounded pride. My world, once so stable, was now unstable, hostile, and I felt powerless, caught in a tightening net woven by Veronica's spite. The initial shock of Veronica Thorne's arrival slowly morphed into a simmering resentment, and then a desperate need to find a solution. I couldn't just stand by and watch my career, my financial stability, and my sanity erode under her tyrannical reign. My first instinct, driven by years of corporate training, was to address the issue professionally, to follow the proper channels. I believed in the system, in the idea that fairness would eventually prevail. I was wrong again. My first attempt was to subtly adapt. I tried to anticipate her demands, to preempt her micromanagement by providing even more detailed reports than she could possibly ask for. I would send her daily summaries, meticulously logging every minute spent on a task, attaching screenshots of every completed step. I thought if I gave her no reason to interfere, she would leave me alone. I was mistaken. Her response was not one of satisfaction, but of suspicion. She would call me into her office, her eyes narrowing as she reviewed my comprehensive reports. "Eleanor," she'd purr, her voice overly sweet. "This is thorough, almost too thorough. Are you perhaps trying to obscure something?" She would then demand even more granular detail, asking for explanations for processes that were standard, tried and true. She turned my proactive efforts into a new avenue for her control, twisting my diligence into a perceived fault. It felt like trying to placate a ravenous beast. The more you offered, the hungrier it became. Next, I decided to try direct communication, hoping that a calm, professional conversation might make her see reason, or at least understand the impact of her actions. I scheduled a meeting with her, preparing bullet points about the importance of information flow, the efficiency lost due to excessive approvals, and the impact of the overtime restrictions on morale and productivity. I framed it as constructive feedback, focused on departmental performance, not personal grievance. I walked into her office, trying to project confidence, my hands clasped tightly in my lap to hide their slight tremble. "Veronica," I began, "I wanted to discuss some observations regarding our workflow. I believe we could enhance efficiency if there was more autonomy on certain projects, especially for experienced team members like myself. The current approval process, while ensuring oversight, sometimes creates bottlenecks." She listened, her expression unreadable, her gaze unwavering. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair, a slow, predatory smile spreading across her lips. "Eleanor," she said, her voice soft, almost condescending, "I appreciate your observations. However, I am the director. My role is to optimize performance, and I believe my methods are achieving just that. Perhaps you are simply resistant to change. Or perhaps," she paused, her eyes glinting, "you are finding the demands of this role at this level a little overwhelming." She made it sound like I was complaining because I couldn't handle the pressure, rather than offering genuine solutions. She dismissed my concerns with a wave of her hand, turning my attempt at constructive dialogue into a personal attack, suggesting my competence was in question. The conversation ended there, leaving me feeling deflated and utterly helpless. My direct approach had not only failed, but had backfired, marking me further as a problem employee in her eyes. I then considered escalating to human resources. I painstakingly documented every instance of micromanagement, every withheld email, every denied overtime request, and the stark discrepancy in my bonus. I poured my frustrations onto paper, believing that surely human resources would see the pattern, the clear targeting. I requested a confidential meeting with Ms. Davies, the head of human resources. She listened patiently, nodding occasionally, taking notes. I felt a flicker of hope, a desperate belief that someone in power would finally see the injustice. When I finished, Ms. Davies sighed, her expression sympathetic but weary. "Eleanor, I understand your concerns," she began, "and I assure you we take all employee feedback seriously. However, Ms. Thorne is a new director, and she has a specific mandate from upper management to implement changes. Her methods, while perhaps unorthodox to some, are within her purview as a director. And regarding the bonus structure, that is entirely at the discretion of the director and senior management. As for overtime, it is a privilege, not a right, and again is at the discretion of management. She then added, almost as an afterthought, perhaps you could try to adapt more to her style, see it as a learning opportunity. It was a polite brush-off, a corporate equivalent of being told to simply deal with it. They were protecting Veronica, not me. The company had invested in her, and they weren't going to risk a formal complaint derailing their new, aggressive director. I left Ms. Davies' office feeling numb, the last vestiges of my faith in the system crumbling. The problem wasn't just Veronica. It was the entire structure that allowed her to wield her power unchecked. I was an insignificant cog, easily disposable. My work life became a relentless grind. Every day was a battle of wills, a test of endurance. Veronica's actions became more brazen, her thinly veiled contempt more obvious. She began assigning me trivial, soul-crushing tasks, like reorganizing old physical archives or data entry that could have been automated. She did this while simultaneously criticizing my productivity, implying I wasn't handling enough complex work, despite the fact she was the one assigning me the meaningless tasks. She would often schedule meetings with me, only to show up 20 minutes late, forcing me to sit there, waiting, my precious work time ticking away. Once, she called me into a meeting with a potential new client, a significant account we were trying to secure. I had prepared diligently, knowing the ins and outs of their industry, ready to impress. During the presentation, she repeatedly interrupted me, correcting minor details that were either insignificant or outright wrong, making me look unsure and ill-informed. She hijacked my talking points, delivering them herself, then turning to the client with a triumphant smile, as if she had single-handedly saved the presentation from my incompetence. The client's eyes, I noticed, kept flicking between us, a flicker of discomfort in their gaze. The deal eventually went through, but I knew I had been publicly humiliated, systematically diminished in front of a key partner. The stress began to take a heavy toll. Sleep became elusive, plagued by racing thoughts and replays of the day's indignities. I developed a constant knot in my stomach, a dull ache behind my eyes that never seemed to dissipate. My shoulders were permanently hunched, as if bracing for the next blow. My friends noticed the change. "Eleanor, you seem so tired," one said over coffee. "Is everything all right at work?" I would offer vague assurances, not wanting to burden them with the full, soul-destroying reality of my daily torment. I started avoiding social gatherings, preferring to just retreat into the quiet solitude of my flat, too exhausted to pretend everything was fine. My passion for my work, once a driving force, slowly withered, replaced by a growing dread each morning as I contemplated stepping back into the oppressive atmosphere of OmniCorp Global. The joy I once derived from solving complex problems was gone, replaced by a cynical exhaustion. I started making small, uncharacteristic mistakes, errors that would have been unthinkable a year ago. A misplaced decimal point here, a forgotten detail there. The pressure was getting to me, eroding my usual precision. The financial strain was equally crushing. Without the overtime and with my bonus significantly cut, my meticulously planned savings for the house deposit began to stall. I had hoped to have enough for a down payment by the end of the year, but now that seemed like a distant, impossible dream. I started cutting back on small luxuries, canceling subscriptions, cooking at home more often, delaying much-needed repairs on my flat. the thought of quitting crossed my mind almost daily. I would spend hours online, scrolling through job boards, but the Manchester job market for senior operations analysts was surprisingly competitive, and the thought of starting fresh somewhere new, of being the newbie again, was daunting, especially with my confidence so battered. I felt trapped, caught between a job that was slowly crushing my spirit and the fear of the unknown. Then came the lowest point. The company announced a new, highly competitive internal leadership development program. It was an intensive, year-long course designed to fast-track high-performing employees into senior management roles. This was exactly the kind of opportunity Mr. Henderson would have pushed me towards, a clear path for professional growth and advancement. I knew I had the skills, the experience, and the dedication for it. I worked tirelessly on my application, pouring my heart and soul into showcasing my achievements and my leadership potential. I even sought advice from a mentor in another department, who reviewed my application and assured me it was outstanding. The interview process was rigorous, involving multiple stages, including presentations and panel interviews. I pushed through the exhaustion and the self-doubt, determined to prove my worth. I felt good about my performance, genuinely believing this could be my escape route, my chance to regain control of my career. A few weeks later, the list of successful candidates was announced. My name was not on it. What stung even more was seeing the name of a junior colleague, barely 2 years out of university, someone I had personally mentored, on the list. While I was happy for them, the injustice of it was a bitter pill to swallow. I learned later, through the office grapevine, that Veronica had been on the selection committee. My application, despite its strength, had been quietly sidelined, marked with vague negative comments about lack of collaborative spirit and resistance to new directives. It was clear she had sabotaged me, effectively slamming the door on my future at OmniCorp. This wasn't just about a program. It was about my professional trajectory, my sense of purpose. It was the ultimate betrayal. The dream of my house, the dream of advancement, the dream of a future where I wasn't constantly looking over my shoulder, all of it shattered. I felt a cold, crushing despair settle over me, a feeling of utter defeat. I had tried everything, followed every rule, played every game, and I had lost. There was nowhere left to turn. I was stuck, trapped in this toxic environment with no apparent way out. It was during this period of profound despair that I started to notice him. Liam. He was one of the delivery guys who regularly brought in supplies, mail, and occasionally lunch orders for special meetings. He was in his late 20s, with an easy smile, kind eyes, and a relaxed charm that was a stark contrast to the stiff formality of our office. He often whistled a jaunty tune as he pushed his trolley through the corridors. I had always found him pleasant, exchanging quick smiles and polite greetings when our paths crossed. He was just a friendly face, a brief moment of normalcy in an increasingly abnormal world. But then, I started to notice Veronica paying an unusual amount of attention to him. She, who usually barely acknowledged anyone below director level unless she was tearing them down, suddenly found reasons to engage with Liam. She'd linger at the reception desk when he arrived, asking overly detailed questions about the deliveries, her voice softening in a way I'd never heard her use. She'd make comments to her executive assistant, loud enough for me to overhear, about how remarkably efficient Liam was, or how quite handsome he was for a delivery person. It was subtly done but unmistakable. Veronica Thorne, the ice queen, the corporate shark, had a crush. and it was a desperate, transparent one. She would preen slightly when he was around, adjust her posture, even attempt a rare, awkward smile in his direction. It was almost comical, seeing her so overtly try to gain his attention, to project an air of approachable charm that was so entirely antithetical to her true nature. What Veronica didn't know, couldn't possibly have known, was that Liam and I had already been quietly flirting for months. It started innocently enough, just a casual compliment about my new spectacles or a shared laugh over a particularly messy delivery. He'd always make eye contact, hold my gaze a little longer, his smile reaching his eyes. I found his easygoing nature refreshing, a breath of fresh air in the suffocating atmosphere of the office. We'd exchange a few words whenever he stopped by my office, just about the weather, or a local football match, or the ridiculousness of corporate life. He had a dry, witty sense of humor that always made me crack a genuine smile, something I hadn't done much of lately. Our flirtation was never explicit, never crossing a professional line, but it was there, a subtle current beneath the surface, a mutual appreciation that blossomed without words. It was a small, private pleasure, a secret language between us that only our eyes understood. I had also noticed, quite clearly, that Liam had zero interest in Veronica. He treated her with the same polite, professional distance he showed everyone else. His smiles were generic, his answers brief. He didn't linger, didn't engage in the prolonged conversations she tried to initiate. He was simply doing his job, oblivious or indifferent to her obvious attempts at charming him. He was too genuinely kind to be cruel, but his disinterest was palpable, an invisible wall that Veronica was too self-absorbed to recognize. Suddenly, an idea began to form in my mind, a tiny spark in the darkness of my despair. It was audacious, deliciously wicked, and entirely personal. It wasn't about getting my bonus back, or securing my promotion, or even getting Veronica fired. It was about reclaiming a sliver of power, about striking back at her in a way she would never expect, a way that would be invisible to everyone else, but profoundly satisfying to me. I had been systematically diminished, devalued, and humiliated. This was my chance to flip the script, to find a way to humiliate her in return, in a way that would only be known to me and to Liam. I had been her victim, but I would not remain so. A new kind of energy began to stir within me, a dangerous, thrilling possibility. The despair didn't vanish entirely, but it was now laced with a potent, intoxicating sense of purpose. This wasn't professional revenge. This was something far more primal, far more satisfying. This was personal. This was about making her unwittingly complicit in her own psychological torment, about turning her obsession into my weapon. One day, Liam was making his usual rounds, delivering a large package to the supply room near my office. He paused at my door, a stack of envelopes under his arm. "Morning, Eleanor," he said, his smile warm, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "Rough day already?" he asked, noticing my somewhat strained expression. I managed a weak smile. "You have no idea, Liam. Every day is an adventure with our new director." I lowered my voice conspiratorially. "She's a real piece of work, isn't she?" "Thinks she's queen of the castle." He chuckled, a low, pleasant sound. "Heard a few whispers, seems like a bit of a tough cookie." His eyes flickered towards Veronica's closed office door, then back to me, a knowing look passing between us. "Some people just need to be knocked down a peg or two, eh?" he said, leaning a little closer. That was it. That was the moment. The permission I didn't know I needed. My heart leaped. "You're telling me," I agreed, a mischievous glint in my eye. Some people need a asterisk, very asterisk specific kind of reality check. He looked at me, a question in his gaze, a hint of curiosity. I decided to push it to see if he was truly game. You know, I said, lowering my voice even further, our dear director, she seems to have developed quite the admiration for you. I watched his face carefully. A faint blush touched his cheeks, and he gave a wry, almost embarrassed smile. Oh, really? Well, she's certainly direct. He laughed, a short, self-deprecating sound. Can't say I've noticed, honestly, too busy with the rounds. His disinterest was clear, and it spurred me on. Oh, she's noticed you, Liam. Believe me, she talks about you quite a bit. How handsome you are, how efficient. She even lingers at reception, waiting for you. I saw his eyes widen slightly in surprise, then a flicker of understanding, and then a slow, dawning amusement. He glanced towards Veronica's office again, a new expression on his face, a hint of mischief joining his usual calm. Well, he murmured, his gaze returning to mine, a spark of shared secret igniting between us. So, I continued, a playful challenge in my tone, what if we gave her something to really notice, something to make her wonder? I let the implication hang in the air, a silent question. Liam's smile widened, a true, genuine smile that reached his eyes, making them sparkle. Oh, Eleanor, he said, his voice a low rumble. I think I like the sound of that. What exactly did you have in mind? He was in. He understood. And in that moment, a dangerous, exhilarating plan began to solidify in my mind. The bitterness of defeat began to transform into the sweet anticipation of a silent victory. The conversation with Liam was a catalyst, transforming my internal despair into a potent, thrilling determination. The subtle shift in his expression, the mischievous glint in his eyes, confirmed that he not only understood my unspoken suggestion but was also intrigued by it. The thought of striking back, not with formal complaints or professional competence, but with something entirely audacious and personal, filled me with a giddy sense of power. It was a secret weapon, hidden in plain sight. Over the next few days, our flirtation, once a quiet undercurrent, became more overt, more noticeable, at least to my discerning eye. Whenever Liam made a delivery to our floor, he would make sure to pause by my office, even if only for a second longer than necessary. His smiles became broader, his eye contact more prolonged, his casual touches to my arm or shoulder more frequent and deliberate. He would sometimes lower his voice conspiratorially, asking about my weekend plans, or making a wry comment about a ridiculous new directive from Veronica, his gaze lingering on mine as if we shared a profound secret. I reciprocated, laughing a little louder at his jokes, letting my hand brush his when he handed me a package, holding his gaze with an open invitation. We were performing, not for the office, but for an audience of one, Veronica Thorne. And she absolutely noticed. I saw her eyes, sharp and watchful, flicker towards us whenever Liam was around. She would pretend to be engrossed in her computer, but I could feel her attention, a prickling sensation on the back of my neck. Her jaw would subtly clench, her lips thin into a disapproving line. The overtures she had made towards Liam, once so obvious, began to lessen, replaced by a subtle tension in her posture, a rigid disapproval that betrayed her inner turmoil. It was clear she was picking up on the shift, on the undeniable connection, however fabricated, between Liam and me. She, who claimed to be smarter than everyone, was completely oblivious to the depth of our secret game, mistaking innocent flirtation for a genuine relationship, and jealousy was clearly taking root. Her annoyance, though unspoken, was a delicious validation. But I wanted more. The initial thrill of her discomfort was satisfying, but it wasn't enough to counteract the months of humiliation and the constant erosion of my self-worth. I wanted to take it a step further, to make the revenge truly poetic, deeply personal, and irrevocably satisfying. My mind kept returning to Veronica's throne, her seat of power, the large, polished mahogany conference table in the main meeting room. It was where she held court, where she delivered her condescending pronouncements, where she made everyone else feel small. It was where she sat, smug and triumphant, during the meeting where my leadership program application was rejected, the very same table where she had enjoyed the free pastries from the representatives while my career aspirations were systematically dismantled. That table, that room, was the symbol of her dominance, her control. It was the stage for her cruelty. And it was there that the ultimate act of defiance needed to take place. I had my own set of keys to the office. As a senior operations analyst with a decade of service, I had often been entrusted with closing up or coming in early for critical system updates. The key chain, heavy with its many metallic teeth, felt different now, no longer a symbol of responsibility, but a tool for rebellion. The thought had been a fleeting fantasy at first, a wild, rebellious whisper in the darkest corners of my mind. But the more I thought about it, the more it solidified, growing from a reckless impulse into a concrete plan. The next time Liam came in for a late afternoon delivery, just as most people were beginning to pack up for the day, I made my move. He wheeled in a large trolley laden with new office chairs. He paused by my office, giving me a quick conspiratorial wink. "Looks like someone's upgrading their seating," he said, his voice light. "Must be for the big boss." I grinned, a genuine, unburdened smile. "Indeed, maybe she'll be more comfortable when she's plotting our downfall." We both chuckled. Then I lowered my voice, my heart pounding a thrilling rhythm against my ribs. "Liam," I began, my voice barely above a whisper, "how busy are you tonight? Any plans?" He raised an eyebrow, a knowing glint in his eyes. "Depends. Something exciting on offer." "Potentially," I said, my gaze flickering towards the empty corridor, then back to his. "What would you say to an exclusive after-hours tour of OmniCorp Global? A very private tour, no expense spared on the ambience, and perhaps a chance to truly admire the new conference table." I could see the understanding dawn in his eyes, followed by a surge of pure, unadulterated amusement. His smile widened, and he leaned in closer. "Eleanor Vance," he murmured, his breath warm against my ear. "You are full of surprises. I'm intrigued, very intrigued." I handed him a small slip of paper with my phone number. "Text me when you're done with your rounds and I'll give you the details. Say 9 o'clock. Everyone will be long gone by then." He took the paper, his fingers brushing mine, sending a jolt through me that wasn't just about revenge, but about the forbidden thrill of the moment. "9 it is," he confirmed, his voice a low, excited whisper. "I'll be there." The hours dragged by agonizingly slowly. I finished my work, trying to appear normal, trying to suppress the manic energy buzzing beneath my skin. I clocked out at the usual time, exchanging polite goodbyes with colleagues, my mind already miles away, envisioning the evening ahead. I went home, showered, and changed into something comfortable but still a little daring. At 8:30, my phone buzzed. It was Liam. "All done, on my way, ready for our exclusive tour." I grinned, a wide, feral grin. "Ready when you are. See you there." I arrived back at the office building precisely at 9, my heart thumping with a mix of nerves and exhilaration. The parking lot was almost deserted, only a few stray cars belonging to security staff. The usual vibrant lobby was quiet, the lights dimmed, casting long shadows. I used my key card, the familiar beep echoing loudly in the stillness. I made my way to the elevators, the ride up to the 4th floor feeling impossibly long. When the doors opened, the office floor was shrouded in a muted glow from emergency lights, an entirely different beast from its daytime persona. It felt clandestine, ripe for mischief. Liam was already there, leaning against the reception desk, a casual smirk on his face. He looked different out of his uniform, in jeans and a dark t-shirt that showed off his arms. Well, Eleanor," he said, his voice a low murmur, "this is quite the private viewing." I laughed, a nervous, excited sound. "Only the best for our VIP guest. Shall we?" I led him through the maze of cubicles and empty offices, the silence amplifying our footsteps. We passed Veronica's office, its door closed, its occupant blissfully unaware of the sacrilege that was about to occur. We reached the large conference room. I pushed open the heavy oak doors, revealing the enormous mahogany table, gleaming faintly in the dim light. The chairs were pushed neatly under it, waiting for the morning's inevitable power struggles. "So," I said, turning to Liam, a mischievous glint in my eye, "this is the legendary conference room, where all the magic happens." He raised an eyebrow, a slow smile spreading across his face. "Indeed. Looks like it's seen a lot of important decisions." He walked towards the table, running a hand along its smooth surface. "Quite the sturdy piece of furniture." "Very sturdy," I agreed, my voice a little breathless. "Built to last, and to withstand anything." I met his gaze, and in that moment the silent understanding between us was absolute. The thrill of the forbidden, of rebellion against the oppressive force that had dominated my life, surged through me. We moved closer, the air crackling with anticipation. The details of what happened next are for me and Liam to know, a delicious secret etched into the very fabric of that polished table. But I can tell you this. The sounds of our hushed laughter, the rustle of clothes, the quiet whispers, all echoed in the empty room, a defiant symphony against the oppressive silence Veronica had imposed. We were reclaiming the space, turning her symbol of power into a playground of liberation. It was exhilarating, a potent mix of defiance, desire, and pure, unadulterated joy. We explored the limits of that grand table, turning every inch of its surface into a canvas for our rebellion. We weren't just having fun. We were performing an act of symbolic vandalism, a desecration of Veronica's altar of authority. Each touch, each kiss, each breath was a whisper of "you cannot break me." It was primal, liberating, and utterly unforgettable. We stayed for hours, lost in our own world, the city lights twinkling outside the large windows, silent witnesses to our clandestine operation. We continued our after-hours office visits regularly, specifically in the conference room, on the very table where Veronica held her meetings. It became our ritual, our secret sanctuary, a source of perverse pleasure. Each time, as I cleaned up before leaving, making sure there was no trace of our presence, I would imagine Veronica's impending arrival, oblivious, sitting right where my bare skin had been, where Liam's hands had been, where our laughter had echoed. The thought alone was intoxicating. It was an invisible rebellion, a silent scream of defiance that only I could hear. The true climax, the moment of poetic justice, came during the Monday morning executive meeting. I sat in my usual chair, trying to appear attentive as Veronica swept into the conference room, her usual imperious stride, her severe suit, her perfectly coiffed hair. She took her place at the head of the table, directly opposite me, the very spot we had so thoroughly christened just hours before. The table, freshly polished by the cleaning staff, gleamed innocently. Veronica, however, was anything but innocent. She pulled out her notes, adjusted her perfectly tailored jacket, and then, with a flourish, she reached for a plate of freshly baked pastries that the client relations team had brought in. She took a large, gooey croissant, her teeth sinking into it with relish, crumbs falling onto the very surface where Liam and I had shared intimate moments just a few nights prior. Watching her sit there, so self-assured, so utterly oblivious, stuffing her face with goodies, completely unaware that the very surface supporting her elbows had been witness to my secret rebellion, was the most satisfying feeling I had ever experienced. It was the revenge I didn't realize I needed. It was a silent triumph, a victory that transcended professional grievances. Her arrogance, her condescension, her perceived superiority, all of it was built on a foundation of ignorance. And I was the one who held the key to that knowledge. The irony was exquisite, the pleasure profound. I felt a surge of strength, a quiet sense of triumph that radiated through me. My heart no longer pounded with anxiety, but with a deep, resonant hum of satisfaction. The consequences of this choice were not about Veronica being fired or my immediate promotion. It was far more subtle, far more personal. The revenge transformed me. It injected a quiet confidence into my veins, a sense of control I hadn't felt in months. Dealing with Veronica became not just tolerable, but almost amusing. Every time she spoke, every time she tried to belittle me, I had a secret, an inside joke that only Liam and I shared. It was a shield against her toxicity, a quiet defiance that disarmed her power over me. Her petty torments still existed, but they no longer pierced me. They bounced off my newfound armor of secret satisfaction. I could look her in the eye, genuinely amused, knowing something she didn't, something that fundamentally undermined her self-importance. My relationship with Liam, born out of a mischievous plot, blossomed into something unexpected and wonderful. Our clandestine meetings in the empty office at night, initially fueled by the thrill of revenge, soon became genuine connections. We discovered a shared sense of humor, a mutual understanding of life's absurdities, and a genuine affection for each other. What started as a daring act against a common enemy evolved into a deep, meaningful bond. We explored Manchester together on weekends, discovering hidden cafes and forgotten alleys, our conversations flowing easily, punctuated by laughter and comfortable silences. He saw me, truly saw me, beyond the stressed employee, beyond the revenge seeker, and I saw him as more than just the charming delivery guy. We became a team, united not just by a shared secret, but by a growing tenderness. The professional injustices still stung, but I no longer felt trapped. Liam became my confidant, my anchor, and a source of immeasurable joy. The professional landscape at Omni Corp didn't magically change overnight. Veronica Thorne remained the director, still as arrogant and micromanaging as ever. But I had changed. I no longer dreaded coming to work. My productivity, which had dipped during my lowest point, slowly climbed back up, not out of fear, but out of a renewed sense of purpose. I was doing my job well because it was a reflection of my own competence, not because I sought her approval. The knowledge of our secret, hidden in the very heart of her domain, gave me an unshakable inner calm. Then came the unexpected twist, the final note in this symphony of silent revenge. Months after our first clandestine rendezvous, Liam and I were having coffee at a small cafe near my flat. We were talking about our future, making plans for a holiday, when he casually mentioned something. "You know, Eleanor," he said, stirring his coffee, "the company's been making some changes to their delivery contracts." Apparently, OmniCorp is considering bringing their logistics in-house, cutting out the external delivery services like mine. My heart sank for a moment. Oh, Liam, I'm so sorry. What does that mean for you? He smiled, a confident, reassuring smile. Well, I've actually been headhunted. A new tech startup, a competitor of OmniCorp, is looking for a logistics manager. They were very impressed with my efficiency metrics and my knowledge of local supply chains. And guess who gave them my name? I looked at him, bewildered. Who? Mr. Henderson, Liam replied, his eyes twinkling. Your old boss. Apparently, he's an investor in this new startup. He remembered me from my days delivering to your office. Said I was one of the most reliable and resourceful people he'd ever met. He also said, very specifically, that he heard Veronica Thorne had a particular appreciation for my work ethic. He thought that was quite amusing, given her usual dismissive attitude towards service staff. He said it showed I had a knack for making an impression, even on the most difficult personalities. He paused, his gaze meeting mine, a silent acknowledgement of the double meaning. He thought I'd be a perfect fit for a dynamic, growing company that values its people, and he specifically mentioned that they needed someone who could work seamlessly with their operations team, someone who knew how to handle complex data and streamline processes. My mind raced, connecting the dots. Mr. Henderson, my old boss, a man who had always believed in me, an investor in a new, growing company that needed a logistics manager and an operations analyst. It was a lifeline, a door opening right in front of me unexpectedly. Liam, I breathed, does that mean there might be an opening for someone like me there, an operations analyst? He grinned, a knowing, triumphant grin. Funnily enough, they mentioned they were actively looking for someone with extensive experience in streamlining operations, particularly someone familiar with the intricacies of OmniCorp's former processes. They need someone who can hit the ground running, someone they can trust implicitly. And they said they'd be very interested in meeting anyone I could personally recommend. It wasn't a direct revenge that got Veronica fired, but a karmic twist that allowed me to escape her clutches, and to do so with someone I loved, into an environment where I would be valued. It was a quiet revolution. I submitted my resignation 2 weeks later, the exact day Veronica was struggling to resolve a major supply chain issue, a problem that, ironically, I could have easily solved, but chose not to. I left OmniCorp Global without fanfare. No dramatic exit, no confrontation. I just walked out, the key to my office no longer a tool of defiance, but a relic of a battle I had silently won. I left Veronica Thorne to her kingdom of misery, oblivious, still obsessed with control, still sitting at her polished conference table, completely unaware of the sweet, secret victory that had been playing out right under her nose, leaving her in her self-created hell. My revenge wasn't her downfall, but my ascent, a quiet triumph fueled by a secret, exhilarating act of rebellion. And as for my house, Liam and I decided to look for one together, a shared dream built on a foundation of mischief, defiance, and unexpected love.